comes and goes. Let's kind of go through this.
Yep.
Trade by trade, item by item, team by team. Start with the Dodgers. Start with Jack Flaherty. They get what is, I think, fair to say, they got the best pitcher that actually moved. Maybe not the best pitcher whose name came up, but they got the guy that actually is on a new team today that he was on yesterday. Who did the best there? I think that you can look at this, that the Dodgers got the best guy that actually moved yesterday. If you want to find the silver lining to the trade deadline from yesterday, of all the guys that moved on the mound, the Dodgers got the best starting pitcher.
So I think there's a couple things to look at. I think the question mark is still going to obviously be the health of the Los Angeles Dodgers, but you added a pitcher that will eat you up innings, will get you through the rest of the regular season, and I think, knock on wood, you're right about that,
yeah.
and I think that's completely fair, but I think what you just described, if the Dodgers had done nothing, you were dealing with a really awkward situation. Glasnow we saw last night. Clayton Kershaw, you're going to get a chance to see tonight in San Diego. But really the question marks, Gavin Stone kind of reaching a point of the season where there's curiosity of what's going to happen. I don't have to tell you about Walker Buehler, Bobby Miller, all these other youngsters that they have. I don't know how he's going to do. I don't know if he's going to be the difference of a long playoff run or not. But I think what you just said about adding a pitcher that can get you, I think in his 18 starts, 12 of them, he's gone over 6 innings.
Yep. He's been good.
He's been good.
He's been good.
Is he the best pitcher out there? Is he an ace coming into the Dodgers rotation? No, he's not, but I think a lot of teams would rather have him than not have him.
Yeah, this is a classic two things can be true at the same time. Are the Dodgers better today than they were yesterday because of the addition of Jack Flaherty? Yes. Does it change anything about the calculus of the postseason? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If he's the difference between you going to the World Series or not, I'd be stunned. Absolutely stunned. The difference to them going to the World Series or not is whether or not Tyler Glasnow is able to stay healthy and look like he looked mostly last night. He had one bad inning, but other than that, pretty good. The difference between them going to the World Series or not is whether or not Yamamoto comes back and looks like he did. The difference on whether or not they go to the World Series is if they can get their bullpen sorted out in some meaningful way. That Jack Flaherty being their third or fourth best guy in a playoff, that's not going to determine whether they go or not. It's going to help them to get to the finish line. It's going to take some of the pressure off of the bullpen. We've seen what their bullpen looks like over the last month or so. I think since Yamamoto went down, they have the 25th highest bullpen ERA in baseball. It's been dreadful.
Something crazy.
It's been really bad, and it's not complicated. Why? They pitch 6 innings every game. It's just you just can't cover that amount of time over and over and over again for a long period of time. But it was, do you need him for August? Yeah, you do. Do you need him for September? Yeah, you do. Is he the difference between them winning the World Series or not? I just don't see it. I just don't think that we're going to be sitting here in the middle of October saying, man, they got Flaherty going tonight. This is going to be awesome. I think it's, hey, Glasnow tonight, Yamamoto tonight, even Kershaw, I think at some point might be more interesting in those roles than a guy that has had a nice season. I don't think he's a difference maker. I think he's a problem solver for now.
Dodgers, we know what they did in the offseason, and they went out and made a significant amount of changes. Glasnow, Yamamoto, Teoscar Hernandez, they clearly went out, paid big money. Teoscar was a steal. I think everybody would agree with that. Paid big money to get a couple aces, and we know what's going on with Yamamoto. I think the question for the Dodgers is how much did the last 24 hours, or even let's call it the last few days, they were up against the competition of so many other teams. And not every team, I think you look at some of the names that were out there didn't move, and that's common at trade deadlines where there's names out there that you think, okay, that guy's definitely leaving and he doesn't go somewhere. Mm-hmm. You can pick the names that you want: Crochet, Blake Snell. There's other players that are out there. What do you think the Dodgers should have done different? Because the problem is they got to a point in the season where everyone was fighting for the same players. Is there something they could have done earlier? I'm going to give you an example, and I think this is an interesting one because it was a little bit unique. Before the season started, Dodgers and the Padres were actually on their way to Seoul, to South Korea.
Yep.
Dylan Cease, the Padres made a move for Dylan Cease early. Then they made a move probably 2 months before the trade deadline to go get Luis Ariz.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if it sounds like that's more uncommon than common of how the Padres did it. How much of the Dodgers offseason should they have been addressing certain things? How much of it was out of their hands? Because I think this last couple of days, if you're just looking at what they've done the last couple of days, it sounds like, from your perspective, a little bit underwhelming, but I don't know really what they could have done.
It's underwhelming, but for the reasons you said, it's not disappointing. Right, I think disappointment is a bunch of guys that you would love to have seen on the Dodgers are on different teams today. I don't think that's true.
Sure.
Right? Like, it's a Randy Arozarena. Would I like to have seen him as a Dodger? Yeah, but is it the end of the world? No, not really.
Yeah.
And I think most of the guys that have moved in this situation in the last, call it 2 weeks, fall into that category. But I think you brought up the right point. It's not what did they do yesterday. It's not what did they do over the last 4 or 5 days. It's what did they do from basically the beginning of spring training to where we are right now. Dylan Cease wasn't on the Padres when the season started. He wasn't. They made a trade. They got him. He might be the best pitcher in the National League right now, or one of them. Corbin Burns was not on the Baltimore Orioles when we were getting started. The Orioles traded to go get him. These are two high-level guys that were clearly available, and it's not like the Dodgers didn't have question marks in their pitching staff. They did. Tyler Glasnow, before he'd thrown a pitch, was a question mark. Not because he's not any good. He's awesome. He's hurt all the time.
Injuries. Already, the amount of innings he pitches in a year.
All of it. We're already past that. Yamamoto, what the knock on him was, new league, small guy, pitched once a week in Japan. How's it going to translate to the big leagues? Well, what it translated to the big leagues was he pitched 2 months and he broke. Okay, so there was questions on him. Ohtani wasn't going to pitch. Kershaw's coming back from an injury. Bobby Miller's in his second year and looked like less than himself at the end.
Sure.
Walker Buehler's coming. These are not questions that popped up over the last 2 weeks. These are questions they had coming into the season. And I know they spent money, and I know that they were aggressive, but I think that's the part where you really feel like you missed the boat. Not necessarily yesterday or the few days leading up to it. It's some of these guys that they clearly were moving. Burns moved. The Dodgers have had his name attached to them for a long time. Cease moved. And I didn't want them to sign Snell, but Snell was available. Jordan Montgomery was available. There were guys that are proven major league commodities that moved that didn't land here. All of the guys that the Dodgers went and did had big question marks. Literally, none of them were without at least some degree of, let's see how that goes. And all of them, Glasnow's missed time. Yamamoto's still down. Kershaw's pitched one game.
Yeah.
Miller in the minor leagues. Buehler never really came back in any meaningful way. The Julio thing blew up on them at the end of last season. Like, it just, all of the things, their entire pitching staff, if everything hit, it's the best pitching staff in baseball. Well, none of it really has hit to the degree that you were hoping for. And then you run into what you ran into yesterday, which is there aren't really anybody out there that can fix this right now. We're kind of stuck with what we have and hoping and crossing your fingers and knocking on wood that Yamamoto comes back, that Kershaw stays healthy, that Glasnow is able to get to the finish line. It's nothing but question marks going forward.
That's the risk they run into. Their risk is if a couple of these guys, look, Mookie Betts is going to eventually come back, and that's going to look completely. I mean, yesterday watching the game, it looked kind of comedy watching this game. It's like
that lineup was
where
it was a weird night.
It was a weird night, but you know that's not the Dodgers team that's going to be there in a month. Mookie will come back. Freddie Freeman obviously will come back. May even be back by this weekend. We'll see what happens. A little bit of positive news on Muncy that he could potentially come back as well. We'll see what happens there. But I think the question.
A lot of ifs.
A lot of ifs. And I think that's what you're running into with the Dodgers. You're saying, and I haven't even mentioned one pitcher. Like, you mentioned some of the pitchers. Those are the bigger question marks. It's going to be more important for them to have not just arms there, but Yamamoto's got to look like Yamamoto you're hoping for, right?